Batman Arkham Asylum is a masterpiece of a game in many ways, but one of the ways that it is most impressive, I truly believe to this day, is not necessarily its combat, it's not necessarily its stealth. I mean, if you play later games, there are certainly improvements on some of these things. Yet, one thing remains undisputed that this game is the king of. That is atmosphere. This game is an atmospheric giant. It focuses on horror elements while not quite being a horror game, and yet it is able to capture the heart and soul of the previous Batman works that people like Paul Dini, who was involved here, and Kevin Conroy, who obviously was involved here, legend, were a part of, like, for example, Batman the Animated Series. I mean, this is, in a lot of ways, a spiritual successor to that kind of dark gothic vibe from the 90s cartoons that Batman starred in. Now, that said, I wanted to take a look throughout the Arkham series at different things that each game did the best. I've already done videos years and years ago, it's probably like 4 or 5 years ago at this point, of like top 5s of things that I thought the games did best, and I do want to revisit some of those different topics because some of my opinions have changed over the years. But for this kind of mini series, I wanted to take a look at each Arkham game, what, like, one thing that I think it did the best, and go from there. And for Arkham Asylum, that is going to be its atmosphere, honestly mixed with its claustrophobia, which those two go hand in hand. They're pretty much the same thing in many ways. So I'm interested to hear what you think in the comments down below. What is your favorite element from this game? Why do you like it so much? What do you think aged the best? Let me know. I do read those comments and I appreciate that very much. And I do want to play through this game again sometime in the future over on Degenerate Plays. That's my Let's Play channel. That is in the description down below and the pinned comment. Not quite sure when I will do that, but it is something I have planned and I'd like to return to. Right now over there we're playing through GTA Online, Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remaster, finishing up Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, so lots of fun stuff. Now, when it comes down to it, this game was actually heavily inspired by many things. One of them was Batman the Animated Series, like I mentioned in the intro. But it was also heavily inspired by another thing, which was a graphic novel and a story by Grant Morrison, Batman Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. Now, this was a psychological thriller, horror almost kind of story that focused on the asylum and Batman sort of being trapped there. And I always thought that it was interesting that this game was not afraid to be inspired by comics. It was not afraid to be inspired by cartoons, and it did let that atmosphere and inspiration shine through in pretty much every moment of the game, because you as Batman are trapped here. You are stuck on this island, essentially, with a massive group of villains. A group of villains who, if they were to team up, which to some extent they do, to some they don't, they end up being a really big threat. And Batman doesn't want to abandon this asylum. He doesn't want to just let the guards take care of it or the security take care of it. And there are threats of bombs throughout Gotham City. So in many ways, you have this feeling of no backup, no help. Like, you are the backup, actually, to the security on the island. And as you go throughout the game, you notice more and more of these guards kind of get picked off, killed, or turned into titans or things like that in some different way. I mean, as you go through the story, it becomes more and more isolated, to the sense where at the beginning, you as Batman can walk around, and there are different areas on the island where you can find staff members, or maybe you can find security, even Jim Gordon, obviously. As the game goes on, there are fewer and fewer of these people that you feel like you can rely on or that you can save. In many ways, Arkham Asylum does something that later Batman games don't do, which is make you feel powerless in certain situations. Batman is a hero. I mean, one of his main goals is to preserve life. And yet this riot, this breakout, orchestrated by the Joker, one of its main goals is to cause chaos. One of its main goals is to destroy life in many ways. The yin to his yang, right? as always, Joker is just kind of there, his opposite. And this game's atmosphere is so chocked and packed full of Easter eggs, secrets, and small little nuggets of interesting goodness that people to this day are still discovering them. People to this day, now maybe somebody else did, but people to this day are still posting stuff on Reddit like, I never noticed this in this Arkham game, be it Asylum or a different one. It's something that Rocksteady did an incredible job with. I mean, even now, a few years ago, I had played the game multiple times, I never really knew how much you could go to the visitor center and talk to Joker, or at least talk to Joker or Harley Quinn, essentially, and kind of get psychoanalyzed through that lens of a psycho. I thought that was really interesting, and it's something I didn't know the extent of, and even there you see that the game changes its atmosphere. It isolates you further, putting you right in the eyes of Batman, not letting you interact with that room really at all, and just kind of making you a vehicle for the narrative at that point. That said, the atmosphere of horror and chaos, it does not just extend to Joker. There are powerless elements to it throughout. For example, the Riddler, who is, as always in this series, screwing with Batman. I mean, this game would set a precedent for that, and yet he's not even in the asylum during this breakout. So you are kind of put in a position where you're trying to solve his riddles and best him, but you can't physically get your hands on him. He's almost an entirely psychological threat. Now, this is something that I think later games didn't necessarily do quite as good of a job on. It's something that Arkham Asylum, though, took very, very seriously. The psychological aspects of Batman and the psychological aspects of an actual asylum. You cannot grapnel boost away from danger. You cannot call in a Batmobile to save you. Now, does that make those later games bad or even worse? No, they're just different. But this is one of the reasons why Arkham Asylum is one of my favorite video games of all time. It limits you. Its atmosphere limits what you are capable of. Its isolated nature limits what Batman can do. And I think that that's something really special. Even looking at the Scarecrow, when you look at later games like Arkham Knight, the Scarecrow's delusions are more grandiose. They're more, I don't know, of a spectacle. And what Scarecrow is doing is more of a spectacle as well. In Arkham Asylum, what Scarecrow is doing to Batman is very personal. It's very targeted. And it preys directly on multiple fears that Batman has, not just one central fear, like Arkham Knight does. Again, does that make that later game worse? Absolutely not. It's just very different. And I find it fascinating to go through this game and to be in a position where you are Batman and you do have tools at your disposal, but you can only get access to so many of them. You only have access to pretty much yourself and no other backup other than talking to Alfred or Oracle or, sometimes Gordon. It's not like there's someone else there. There's no Bat family backing you up. There's no Batmobile backing you up. There's nothing backing you up really except yourself. And when you do stealth sections, the atmosphere also plays into that. Batman in later games, like I said, you can get out of trouble if you need to by utilizing the game's mechanics, which is what they're there for. Nothing wrong with that. But in this game, if you are inside of a building and you're zipping from gargoyle to gargoyle, it's a little slower, it's a little more methodical, and you can be picked off by just a random henchman with a gun a lot easier than later games. Throughout the game, there are also hints of other villains that you will encounter which play into the atmosphere extremely well. For example, Killer Croc. At the very beginning of the game, you bump into him, and he points out to you that he has your scent, and he'll come for you later on. And while traveling through the asylum, you can find other references to Croc as well, whether it be meat or a variety of other things. Even finding out how Aaron Cash lost his hand in this continuity with Killer Croc. Pretty dark stuff. So by the time you get underground and you actually end up in Croc's lair, you don't really know what to expect. And again, you're put in a position mostly of being powerless, of having to run away, of having to plant a trap. I think this is something that's done very well that, again, does tie into that horror atmosphere. You are not able to punch your way out of every problem in Batman Arkham Asylum. A lot of it does need to be methodical, and they play off of that idea of almost a MacGyver-like quality that Bruce Wayne has, of being able to problem solve with the materials and items he has around him in a limited situation. It does a fantastic job of putting you in the driver's seat of that kind of Batman, a psychological, methodical one who is able to survive a nightmare in a claustrophobic space and doesn't have backup and doesn't have access to all of his resources. In closing, I did want to mention a couple other things that I think are really incredible about this game that do tie into that atmosphere. One of the elements is stylization. Now, this actually you can see in the art that is throughout the game, like in character profiles, things like that. I would say the art in this game is probably the most unique in the series, the closest to a comic book, which I will talk about probably in another video entirely. I wanted to take a look back at the style of this game and how it is a little more cartoony and it has a little bit more of those comic book references. But in general, another one I thought was very interesting was the music. Now, the music in many of these games is fantastic, and in fact, I think Christopher Drake's soundtrack in Batman Arkham Origins really stands out to me, just like how he did the soundtrack for the Dark Knight Returns movies. But the soundtrack in Arkham Asylum is very slow and horror-like, and it plays into the themes of the darkness and the isolated nature of the world around you, and it feels crazy and foreboding, adding to that atmosphere and really putting you in that situation of being stuck on Arkham Island. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would like to do other video essays like this again. They do take me a lot longer than, some of my other content like news and stuff like that. But these and top fives are things I want to do again. I obviously don't want to just do them for Arkham, but I do want to revisit this because I miss this style of videos, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you want to share it with somebody, whether it's on Reddit, Twitter, somewhere else, I appreciate it. YouTube's not really a big fan of pushing this channel, so you guys supporting it means the world to me. Speaking of that and your support, using the Fortnite code DJAY123 has been a huge help and blessing for me and my family, so I appreciate those of you who have done that, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. We do also have our own store, CosmoBunny.shop, where you can help support our channels. We appreciate it very much. We sell coasters, keychains, trays, and other resin items from recycled paper from comic books, manga, magazines, and more paper that have been damaged. We save some of that art, we transform it into a new medium. Kind of supposed to be one of the points of fair use, turning something old into something new that it couldn't be before. And what we do is then we recycle the rest. There is a sale going on right now. At the time of me recording this, at least. I don't know if it'll be over if you watch this in the future, but the discount code for that sale is SALE, and you can get 15% off your entire order. Also, alternatively, if you are a little bit lazy like I am sometimes, you can just click the link below where it has sale attached to it, and it'll already automatically add that to the items that you're putting in your cart. So we appreciate you checking that out, and I appreciate you watching this video. Have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shui.